I shouldn't have noticed her this much. But the first time she adjusted my shoulders, pressing her palm lightly between my blades, it was like the entire room went still. Her voice carried across the retreat's center in that low, even rhythm. "Empty your thoughts." The others obeyed, eyes closed, drifting. I tried to follow, but she had already broken the rule for me. Because her hand was still there, steady, warm, and I couldn't think of anything else. She was older than anyone else in the room, though you'd never call her old. Mid-40s, maybe? Her hair was pulled back, but a few strands had slipped loose, grazing her cheekbones. There was something about the way she carried herself, shoulders straight, steps deliberate, that made even silence feel like a command. When she moved on, the absence of her hand ached more than the pressure had. I let my arms drop a fraction lower, pretending it was just strain. But really, I wanted her to notice again. After the class, I stayed behind, rolling up my mats slower than necessary. She was kneeling by the window, folding blankets into perfect squares. "You should drink more water after," she said without looking up. Her tone was casual, but the words lingered, heavier than advice. I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it, because anything I said felt too small. Instead, I picked up the glass bottle from my bag, unscrewed the cap, and let the pause stretch until she finally glanced over. Her eyes were calm, the kind that seemed to see further than the surface. But something flickered there, something she covered quickly by returning to the blankets. "You listen better than most," she added. I almost laughed, because I'd done nothing but fail to empty my thoughts. The retreat center was too quiet that evening. The others had wandered into town for dinner, leaving the air heavy with the smell of incense and lemon soap. I should have left too. Instead, I hovered in the doorway. She looked up again, caught me, and tilted her head. "You're still here?" I nodded. My voice came out too soft. "Didn't feel like going." For a second, it seemed like she might send me away. But then she gestured to the floor beside her. "Help me fold then." I knelt down, the wood cool beneath my knees. She handed me a blanket, her fingers brushing mine, too light to be an accident, too deliberate to be innocent. "Like this," she murmured, guiding the edge with her hand over mine. Her touch lingered, then pulled back, slow, like the moment didn't want to end. We worked in silence. Or rather, I worked, and she kept finding reasons to correct me. Adjusting the fold, smoothing a wrinkle, brushing her palm against my wrist again. None of it necessary, all of it unforgettable. At one point, I looked up and found her already watching me. The pause between us stretched, taut and electric. Her lips parted slightly, as if she might say something, but the words never came. Instead, her gaze dipped, caught on the space between us, the blankets, the wood floor, and the nearness of my hand. I didn't breathe. Then the hallway door opened. A gust of cool night air rushed in, carrying the sound of laughter from outside. We both jerked back like we'd been caught, though no one had entered yet. She pressed her palms flat on the folded blanket, grounding herself. "We should finish later," she said quickly, her voice steadier than her hands. And for the first time that day, I wasn't sure if she wanted me to stay, or to leave before something slipped. The next morning, I caught myself waiting for her before class even began. She walked in without hurry, a shawl draped over her shoulders, hair still damp from a shower. She smelled faintly of eucalyptus, like the steam of a bathhouse clinging to her skin. "Early again," she said, setting her mat down at the front of the studio. I shrugged, pretending it was nothing. "Couldn't sleep." Something in her expression shifted, just a flicker. She didn't ask why. Instead, she knelt, arranging blocks in neat rows, every gesture too graceful to be casual. As the session started, I tried to focus, but every adjustment she made pulled me deeper. Her hand on the small of my back, firm but careful. The brush of her sleeve grazing my arm when she leaned close to demonstrate a pose. Her breath near my ear when she murmured, "A little higher." "Yes, hold it there." It wasn't just instruction. Not anymore. I kept my eyes closed longer than necessary, afraid she'd see how much I was watching her. After class, the others scattered quickly, leaving mats and chatter behind. I lingered again. She noticed, of course she did, and sighed softly, half amusement, half warning. You're making a habit of this. I smiled, but it faltered when she looked at me directly. And you don't want that? Her silence lasted a moment too long. Then she busied herself with the incense burner, brushing ash into a small clay bowl. It's complicated. Later, when we walked outside, the late afternoon sun lit the retreat center's gardens in a pale gold. She slowed near a wooden bench, gesturing for me to sit. You remind me of someone, she said at last. Her tone was quiet, like she wasn't sure she wanted me to hear it. When I was your age, I used to come to places like this. Restless. Searching for something. Maybe even someone. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Did you find them? Her lips curved in a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. For a while. He was older, married. I thought I understood what that meant. She paused, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I didn't push. The silence between us said enough. She had lived more life than I had, loved, lost, carried regrets like folded notes in her pocket. That night, I dreamed of her voice telling me to empty my thoughts. Except all I could do was fill them with her. The next day, rain kept most people indoors. The studio windows fogged over with condensation, the air inside thick with humidity. During practice, she moved closer than usual, adjusting my stance with both hands on my shoulders. Relax here, she murmured, pressing down gently. I nodded, but my body betrayed me, tense, rigid. She leaned in, close enough that her hair brushed my cheek. You're fighting yourself, she whispered. Her breath was warm against my skin, almost unbearable. I know, I said, but it came out rough, too honest. Her hands lingered a beat too long before pulling away. When class ended, thunder rolled in the distance. The others left quickly, umbrellas snapping open in the courtyard. I stayed again. She wiped down the mats, but her movements were slower, distracted. When I offered to help, she handed me a towel without protest. Our hands touched as she passed it, her fingers warm, steady, mine clumsy and too eager. For a moment neither of us moved. You shouldn't look at me like that, she said softly. I swallowed. Like what? Her eyes flicked down, then back up. Like you already know the ending? We stood there, suspended in the charged quiet of rain against the windows. She was the first to step back, but not before brushing her hand against my arm, so lightly it could have been nothing, except it wasn't. That single touch stayed long after she walked away, echoing louder than thunder. The rain hadn't let up by the third day. The retreat center felt smaller, everyone pressed indoors, voices echoing off the wooden beams. By evening, the halls were nearly empty, the storm keeping most tucked away in their rooms. I found her in the library, a narrow space lined with books no one touched. She stood by the window, watching the storm, shawl draped around her shoulders. You'll catch a cold, I said, half a joke, half an excuse to break the silence. She turned, startled. You walk too quietly. Or you think too loudly. Her lips curved, just barely. Then she turned back to the glass, where rain blurred the world into streaks of silver. I joined her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her. For a moment neither of us spoke. The storm filled the silence with a low, restless rhythm. You shouldn't keep seeking me out, she murmured. I'm not, I said, though we both knew it was a lie. She glanced sideways at me, eyes sharp, but softened quickly. You're young. People will misunderstand. And if they don't? Her breath caught, almost inaudible. She looked away. I thought the moment would dissolve, but then her hand shifted, brushing the edge of the windowsill until her fingers grazed mine. Not deliberate, not quite. But she didn't move them away either. The air thickened. I could hear my own heartbeat, quick and heavy. She exhaled slowly, then said, We should. The door swung open. We jumped apart as one of the other retreat guests stumbled in, shaking rain from their sleeves. Oh, sorry, didn't realize anyone was here, She smiled quickly, practiced, as though nothing had been happening. Just listening to the rain, she said. I forced a nod, hiding my hands in my pockets. My palms still tingled. The intruder browsed the shelves a few minutes before leaving again. As the door shut, silence returned, but it wasn't the same as before. It was sharper now, like glass underfoot. You see? She whispered, her back to me. Too easy to be seen. I should have agreed. I should have stepped back. Instead, I closed the space between us until my shoulder brushed hers. I don't care if they see. She froze. Her knuckles whitened against the window frame. You should, she said finally. The thunder cracked hard outside, rattling the panes. She turned then, quick, and I realized how close we were. Inches. Her breath brushed my cheek, warm, uneven. Her eyes searched mine, as though waiting for me to falter. I didn't. For one suspended moment, the world narrowed to the distance between our mouths. My chest tightened, I leaned, just slightly. And she pulled back. Not far, just enough that the air between us stung. Her hand lifted, hovered near my face, then stopped. Instead, she pressed her palm against my chest, right over my racing heart. You're making this harder than it should be, she whispered. Then why aren't you letting go? Her fingers curled, not pulling away, but holding there, feeling the proof of what she was trying to resist. We stayed like that, too close, too still, while the storm raged against the glass. Neither of us kissed the other. But when she finally dropped her hand, it left behind an ache that promised this wasn't over. The rain had finally passed, leaving the air thick with the smell of wet earth and pine. That night, the retreat center was unusually quiet, most of the guests gone to bed early. I should have gone too. Instead, I found myself outside her door, heart hammering with every step. I almost turned away. Almost. But then the door opened before I could knock. She stood there barefoot, a cardigan pulled over her shoulders, eyes widening when she saw me. What are you? I couldn't. The words tumbled out clumsy, unfinished. I shook my head. I just couldn't stop thinking. Her hand tightened on the doorframe. For a second, she looked like she might send me away. But then she stepped back, silently, letting me in. Her room was dim, lit only by a single lamp. The bed was neatly made, a book face down on the blanket. The air carried a trace of lavender. She crossed her arms, guarded. You shouldn't be here. I know. I swallowed. But if I left without saying this, I'd regret it. Her brow furrowed. Saying what? That I stopped, the words catching. That I can't just treat this like nothing. The silence that followed was unbearable. She moved closer, slow steps, until she was right in front of me. You think you know what you want, she said softly. But you don't know the cost. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, trembling slightly as she tucked her hair behind her ear. I reached out before I could think better of it, brushing the strand back for her, fingertips grazing her temple. She closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, then opened them again, sharper, almost pleading. You shouldn't, she whispered. Then tell me to stop. She didn't. Her breath came quicker, shallow. She leaned against the wall, and without meaning to, I stepped closer, caging her there. I've tried, she murmured, her voice breaking on the last word. Every day, I tell myself to keep distance. To stay professional. But you. Her hand lifted, hesitated, then landed on my wrist. Not pushing me away. Holding me there. You don't let me forget. My chest tightened. Neither do you. The space between us vanished until her forehead rested lightly against mine. I could feel her pulse racing, mirroring mine. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Only her breath, warm against my mouth, too close, too much. I whispered low, say the word, and I'll go. Her fingers dug into my wrist. Don't. The moment stretched, unbearable. Every nerve in my body screamed to close the distance, to finally taste what had been building between us since that first touch in the studio. I tilted closer, Her breath shivered, her eyes fluttered shut. And then a sound split the silence. Footsteps in the hallway. We froze. Her body pressed tight against mine, every muscle tense. The steps passed, fading, but the spell had already cracked. She exhaled, shaky, and whispered against my cheek. "This can't go further." But even as she said it, her hand slid down, fingers lacing briefly with mine before she pulled away. The doorframe seemed to hold her up as she stepped back, eyes wide, raw. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "We can't hide if this continues." I nodded, though every part of me ached at the distance. We were balanced on the edge of something neither of us could undo, caught between retreat and surrender. And I knew, next time, there would be no stopping. The next morning, the retreat felt different. Maybe it was only me, restless from the night before, but even the air in the studio seemed sharper, less forgiving. She led the class as always, her voice calm, precise, never wavering. But I caught it in the smallest things, the way she avoided looking at me, the deliberate space she left when she passed down the rows. And every time her gaze slipped my way, I saw the memory of last night flicker in her eyes. I thought we were careful. I thought no one noticed. I was wrong. After class, while I rolled up my mat, one of the older guests, a woman with a smile too curious to be innocent, leaned close. "You spend a lot of time with her," she said quietly, as if sharing a secret. Heat rushed to my face. "She's my teacher." Her smile tilted, knowing. Of course." Then she left, leaving the words lodged like a stone in my throat. I looked up and found her watching me from across the room. She must have read something in my expression, because she crossed over quick. "What did she say?" "Nothing," I lied. But the way her jaw tightened told me she didn't believe me. That evening, I found her again, this time in the garden, the lanterns glowing against the dark. She sat on a bench, shawl wrapped tight, staring at the ground as though it had answers. "They've noticed," I admitted, sitting beside her. Her breath caught. "Who?" "The woman with the gray scarf." She asked? Her hands curled in her lap, knuckles white. Damn. I'd never heard her curse before. It cracked something open. "You should have told me," she said finally. "Told you what?" "That you weren't just staying behind by accident. That you wanted this." Her voice trembled on that last word, as though saying it out loud gave it too much power. "I thought you knew," I said, softer than I meant to. Her laugh was small, bitter. "I knew. I just kept pretending I didn't. That way, if it all burned down, I could say it was only my imagination." The silence pressed heavy. I reached out, then stopped halfway, my hand hovering near hers. "And now?" She turned, eyes shining in the dim light. "Now it's not imagination. And that terrifies me." She stood abruptly, pacing a few steps, shawl slipping from one shoulder. I followed, catching it before it fell, draping it back over her. My hand lingered at her collarbone, where the fabric met her skin. Her breath shivered. She didn't move away. "You think this is simple," she whispered, not looking at me. "But for me, if they see, if they judge." I brushed a strand of hair from her face, fingertips trembling. "Let them judge." Her eyes finally met mine, raw and searching. "You don't know what it's like to always be the one whispered about. Too old, too selfish, too desperate. I've heard it all." My chest ached. "That's not what I see." Her lips parted, a sharp inhale. She stepped past me, as if to leave, but the brush of her body against mine set everything spinning. I caught her wrist, not tight, just enough to make her stop. The garden was silent except for the distant croak of frogs, the faint hum of lanterns. My hand on her wrist, her pulse racing beneath my fingers. She turned slowly, and in her face was a decision forming, breaking her open. "If we do this," she said, voice low, "there's no going back. No excuses. No pretending." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing into me. "Then maybe it's time to stop pretending." Her hand rose, hovered at my jaw, then slid down my chest, stopping just above my heart. We didn't move closer, not yet. But we both knew the line between us had already shifted, closer than ever, too close to last. The retreat center slept. The hallways were dark, doors shut, the hush of crickets carrying through open windows. I found her again, not by accident this time, drawn to the glow of the studio where a single lamp burned. She was there, barefoot, kneeling on her mat as if she'd been waiting for something she wouldn't admit. When I stepped inside, she looked up, startled, then settled into stillness, though her shoulders betrayed a faint tremor. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I know." My voice was low, rough. "But neither should you. Alone. At this hour." Her lips curved, tired. "I've been alone for years." The words landed heavy. I crossed the room before I could think better of it. We stood inches apart, the air between us charged, fragile. I could smell lavender and the faint salt of her skin. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. "This is wrong." "Then why are you still here?" Her breath hitched. Silence stretched until I reached up, brushing her hair back from her face. My fingers grazed her cheek, warm and trembling beneath my touch. She closed her eyes, just for a second, leaning into my hand before pulling back, shaking her head. "I can't, we can't." But her protest broke, unconvincing, as my thumb traced the line of her jaw. "I'll walk away," I said softly. "If you tell me you don't want this." Her eyes flew open, wet, desperate. She didn't speak. Instead, she stepped forward until her body pressed lightly against mine, her forehead resting against my chest. The dam broke. Her hands gripped my shirt, pulling me closer, even as her words contradicted her. "We'll regret it." "Not tonight," I whispered into her hair. She lifted her head then, faces inches apart, her breath mingling with mine. Her eyes held every fear, every desire, every unspoken history. I could feel the heat radiating between us, unbearable. Slowly, almost painfully slow, I leaned closer. She didn't stop me. Didn't move. Just let the moment tighten until there was no space left to breathe. Our lips hovered, barely brushing, the faintest touch enough to ignite everything we'd been holding back. She pulled away first, but only far enough to speak, voice ragged. "If we do this, I can't hide. Not from them, not from myself. You'll have to carry it too." "I will," I said, steady. Her laugh was soft, broken. "You don't even know what that means." "Then let me learn. With you." For the first time, her expression softened into something like surrender. She kissed me, not hard, not desperate, but trembling, like the moment she'd feared and wanted in equal measure had finally caught her. I kissed her back, gentle at first, then deeper, until her hands slid up around my neck and I felt her body melt against mine. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, hesitant, full of stops and half-breaths. But it was real. When we finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine again, both of us breathing hard. "There's no undoing this," she whispered. "Good," I said. "I don't want to." And for the first time since I'd arrived, I felt her let go, not of control, but of the fear that had held her back. By the time she stepped back, we both knew the choice had been made. No more pretending. No more distance. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Morning light spilled into the studio, pale and golden, softening the edges of everything it touched. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean, quiet except for birdsong outside. She sat beside me on the wooden floor, her legs crossed, a shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders. For once, she didn't seem like the untouchable teacher, the one everyone else looked up to with reverence. She just looked human, tired, beautiful. I reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Our fingers threaded together, natural as breathing. "Last night," she began, her voice low, careful. "It wasn't planned. It wasn't professional. It wasn't wise." I almost braced for her to undo it all. But then she sighed, leaned into my shoulder. "And still, I don't regret it." Relief washed through me, quiet and heavy, like something I'd been holding too long finally set down. We sat in silence, her hand warm in mine. I wanted to say everything, to promise her I'd face whatever came, that I didn't care about whispers or age or fear. But words felt small compared to the weight of her head resting against me, her body finally leaning without resistance. "I've spent years convincing myself I'm fine alone," she murmured. "That no one could look at me, really look, and see more than years, mistakes, regrets." I turned, pressing a kiss to her forehead, lingering there. "I see you." Her breath caught, and for the first time, she smiled without holding anything back. The retreat bell rang in the distance, calling others to breakfast. We didn't move. "They'll talk," she said, though the edge in her tone had softened. "Let them," I answered, echoing the night before. She laughed then, quiet but real, squeezing my hand. "You don't make this easy. Neither do you." Her smile lingered, her eyes searching mine, steady this time. "Maybe that's why it matters." We rose together at last, not rushing, not hiding. As we stepped into the sunlight, I felt her hand still in mine, her thumb brushing once across my skin. A small touch, but it anchored everything: choice, risk, desire, all of it. Whatever came next, it was no longer something we faced apart. They say yoga teaches stillness. For me, it had given something else entirely: the unbearable ache of wanting, and the even greater relief of finally being seen. And as she leaned close once more, whispering so only I could hear, "Empty your thoughts, except about me," I knew I wasn't going anywhere.